Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, Augusto Argandoña Fine Arts. Anytime in this narrated tutorial, you can click on the subscribe button to subscribe to my channel. And I would also appreciate your comments in regards to this particular video, or for that matter, any of the other videos in my channel. If you want to learn about my virtual classes or want to see my paintings, you may do so in my website at aafinearts.com. This tutorial is about how to paint a very tranquil creek out on the countryside. This image happens to be probably someplace up the northern regions of the country, or it could be in the northern regions of Florida as well. But it's pretty much a generic type image. But what I'm going to show you how to do is the water in a very tranquil manner with the reflections of foliage, reflections of trees, and water that has some reflections of the sky, but also shallow colors of soil and sand, etc. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So without much ado, let's just go ahead and start with the fun part of this demonstration. I will be working primarily with flat brushes and maybe one or two of my round brushes. My paper is a 140-pound cold press. I prefer this type of paper for all my watercolor paintings. And occasionally I would, if I'm working on a large piece, I will stretch the paper, but in this case I just taped it to this gator board and I'm going to paint it that way. So what I will do is I'm going to start by adding some water to the sky area, going over the areas where these trees will be. And it's going to very little sky will be shown here, so I'm going to do that like that. And then I'm going to bring in some manganese blue combined with probably a little bit of ultramarine blue. Not too much of that. And just that I've added a little bit of the blue areas. Like I said, there will be some clouds, but primarily some very light blue colors. I'll bring a little bit of cobalt blue into that mix as well to emphasize some of the blue areas of the sky. That's like that. And that's pretty much it. Maybe a little bit more of those manganese in these areas. The manganese is a beautiful color, and combined with either ultramarine or cobalt blue gives you a very, very beautiful sky color. I'm going to add a little bit more blue over here. I'm going to leave this white in this area like that. Maybe a little bit more of the cobalt blue here like that. And that's about it. Okay, so now, before that dries, this is where I'm going to show you how to do the very tranquil water. It's almost like a mirror. So I'm going to add some water into this area, making sure that I'm not covering some of these sandy areas. So I'm going to skip some of those areas and just bring some water to the entire paper in this foreground area, like this. I'm going to bring some of that water here too. Like I said, missing some of these banks. And add quite a bit of water here. There we are. Making sure that it's pretty much covered, this whole area. And I'm going to lift some of this color, this water from this area, so I don't want any bleeding there. So So I'm gonna keep adding water, and I'm gonna start adding the colors when the paper is beginning, the sheen and the paper is beginning to dissipate. That's the time to do this. So I'm gonna add the same colors that I did in the sky. Use some manganese blue with a little bit of cobalt blue. And I'm gonna bring that over here, like that, mostly in this area. And I'm gonna bring those colors down, way down, like that. Like I said, missing those banks. Bring a little bit of that here too. And a little bit of the cobalt, a little bit more of the ultramarine. Like that. Very soft, gradual transition of color to this lower area. Like that. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the blue portion. I'm gonna bring a little bit more ultramarine. It'll be a little darker into this area. In fact, I'm gonna mix the ultramarine with a very light touch of sepia. And bring some of that darker color here like that, before the paper dries, so they don't get any lines, like that, there. Okay, so now I'm gonna clean my brush really good, and before the paper dries, I'm gonna, with a wet brush, I'm gonna pick up some burnt umber and start at this opposite end and work upward. Paper is beginning to dry now, so I'm gonna gotta start working a little faster, like that. A little bit more burnt umber, a little deeper over here, going upward. Like I said, my paper is beginning to dry. I'm also gonna wet my brush slightly and bring some sepia with that burnt umber, and add some of that sepia over here. So you can see the strokes now because the paper is drying quite fast. I'm gonna bring some of that sepia over here, a little darker. I'm gonna wet my brush a little bit, not too much, because I don't want any bleeding on the paper, and I'm gonna continue getting that area a little bit more wet. Bring more of the burnt umber. Like this. Like that. I should get rid of that. I'm gonna get rid of that with some blue. There we are. Minimize that line over there. And here we are. Now the paper is dry here. So just have to continue over here like this. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry. Well, this is still kind of damp. I'm gonna bring in some more burnt umber, this time with ultramarine blue. And add some of that over here before the paper dries completely. It's almost dry here. So I'm gonna add a little bit more water to my brush, not too much, and blend this like that. Oops, that's gonna leave me a line. So I'm gonna bring in a little bit from here, there, like that. Okay, there we are. There. Okay, now I'm gonna let that dry. While that's drying, my sky area should be almost dry, which is good. I'm gonna start doing the greenery. I'm gonna take a smaller round brush, pick up some aureolin yellow, mix with this brown that I have over here, and I'll add a little bit of on the sea green, but mostly the aureolin yellow. And I'm also going to wet that lower area over here a little bit. This is dry. So I'm gonna add a little bit of water to these areas where this grasses, tall grasses are gonna be, and bushes. Remove some of it, excess moisture, and bring those colors just like that. Just like that there. Well, my paper is still my brush is still kind of damp. I'm going to bring some of that moisture here too. There. I'm bringing the same colors for these grasses over here on that damp paper. It's not wet, it's damp. So create these grassy areas, kind of soft. There, like that. All right. Now, I'm also going to get a little bit of water and bring some of the water into this area. And I'm going to change brushes to well, I think I'm going to keep the same brush. Bring some of that aureolin yellow into this brown. Add a little bit of cerulean blue to it. And brings a little bit more of those grasses. Get a little bit more of that green, kind of light. A little bit more aureolin yellow. Like that. Okay. A little bit more of the, this time I'm going to bring a little bit of the Burntumber into this tone dash the chartreuse color down a little bit more. There, like that. This is almost dry now, so I'm going to go ahead and start doing some of the distant trees. I'm going to use this brown. I'm going to add a little bit of raw umber to it to soften it, and a little bit more water, and do some of the distant trees here, like that. There we are. I'm going to add a little bit over here. There. I'm going to use the same colors. I think I'm going to change brushes. Change brush to my larger number 10 round brush. And I'm going to use the same colors. I'm going to bring in raw umber, a little bit of the cerulean blue, and do these trees over here. Like that. Okay. Now, I'm going to use the same colors, raw umber. This time I'm going to bring in some undersea green into it. And to tone it down, I'm also going to add some ultramarine blue. And my brush is kind of almost dry, so I'm going to hold the brush this way, and I'm going to start doing some of the trees like that. Like that there. A little bit more ultramarine. And do some of these trees over here. Like that. Let's do a little bit over here. There, like that. I'm going to bring in some Payne's gray into that mixture. I'm going to start darkening some of this lower greenery. Like that. Okay. Do a little bit of that over here too. There we are. A little bit more water to my brush and add a little bit more of that color over here. There, like that. There we are. Now on this side, I'm going to use the same colors, the raw umber, the undersea green, and the Payne's gray this time, make it much darker. Much darker. And again, with an almost dry brush, I'm going to start over here. Like that. Bring some of those effects over here, showing some daylight, some of the sky through the foliage. I'm going to add a little bit more water to my brush, same colors, and a little bit more intense in these lower areas, but without doing too much of the sky away. Doing too much, eliminating too much of the sky, that's what I meant to say. Now I'm going to add some sepia, start darkening the colors of that greenery, especially closer over here. There we are. Now I'm going to bring in some more of the undersea green, and I'm going to change from the rose umber to rose sienna. Start warming up this green a little bit more. Like that, that's we are. And there's another reason why the change, because I'm going to start doing some, pick up some highlights for some of the branches, dry branches. I'm gonna bring some burnt umber too. There we are. More Payne's gray. Make this a little darker. Like that. And darken this area. More in the sea green. Darken this a little bit more. And with that, create the edge of those grasses. Like that. Okay, so now I'm going to bring a little bit more of the burnt umber, the undersea green, and the sepia to this area. And create those edges of those grasses. Like that. Now, while that is kind of damp, it's not wet, it's damp, I'm going to get my pocket knife, and with the edge of my pocket knife, I'm going to get some of these twigs or little trunks or branches and so forth, like this. And bring the tree trunk for a tree. Another trunk over there, like that. One incline. Put some branches going down. And that's about it for that. I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to darken some of these areas with very little water in the brush, mostly a dry brush effect, but more of the raw umber and the sea green. Darken some of those areas, lower areas there, some over here. These are trees that are, or bushes that are more in front of the other ones. So I'm going to do that. There. And same thing here, I'm going to get some of the tree trunks. Like that. And that's pretty much done. So now this should be almost dry. Before that dries, with a flat brush, I'm going to bring a little bit of water here, not too much. Just dampen the paper, not wet it. Blend it right on the edge of those grasses. And then I'm going to use a mixture of ultramarine blue and the sepia. Get some of the grayish tone. And bring some of that gray over here from some rocks and are really coming down from this hill. Come over here like that. There we are. Bring a little bit of burnt umber into that mixture. Get it like this. There we are. And a little bit more ultramarine blue with the sepia, a little bit more of the sepia. And come with a little bit of darker over here. A little bit more of the burnt umber down here. And with the edge of my knife, I'm also create some textures here. Like that. I'm gonna use an old credit card and bring that over here and do a little bit more texture. Like that. There. All right. So now I'm putting that brush really good. I'll put it aside and we'll take a flat brush, number 6, I believe. No, this is a 1/2 inch flat. And with that flat brush, I'm gonna pick up a little bit of brown matter with this gray that's in my palette. And come over here and do a little bit of this on dry paper, do a little bit of color up to these banks. Like that. Like that. A little bit more, maybe a little bit of burnt sienna, not too much, kind of warm it up a little bit. Do a little bit of that here, leave some white. Like that. A little bit more of burnt sienna. There we are. There. And that's about it. Without adding too much, actually without adding any more water to my brush, I'm going to pick up some sepia and mix with that burnt sienna. And I'm going to do some darker areas. There in those banks. Some of the darker water there, like that. Yeah, like that. A little bit on this edge. And same thing over here. There. Okay, so now here's where some of the reflections are going to be. So with the same brush and clean water, I'm going to bring some of that water over here. See these trees over here? That's where you're going to need some of the reflections. Clean water. Bring that over there like that. A little bit more here. Not too much. Okay, so now you get some of that green that I used for the trees in the background. Raw umber, cerulean blue. Okay, and a little bit of the Payne's gray. And come over here and start doing those reflections. There we are. A little bit of the sepia, that green. Come back over here. And with the paper is kind of damp here, I'm going to re-wet that area a little bit more. There we are. tilting the paper slightly. I'm going to come back over here and do these reflections. Here we are, like this. Like that. And come over here, and when the paper is dry, do some of those ripples or whatever, slight movement in the water, not too much. Come over here and do this, reflections like this. There we are. Over here, the same thing. Like that. Now, all of this, the same thing. Bring some of that water to this area. Same thing over here. Over here, like this. I'm going to change brushes and bring some of that water over here. Now here is, I'm going to go do a transition from the dark green to a dark brown. So I'm going to start with the burnt umber on this area. And come down with the burnt umbers. Like that. Okay, now I'm going to transition to the green with the undersea green and a little bit of sepia. A little bit more sepia and Payne's gray. Make this darker. There. Transition down that way. Bring a little bit more of the sepia. And I come over here. Like that. And then transition down. And on this area that's wet, a little bit more wetness. More ultramarine blue here. And this will be darker. Without doing away with that bank. And coming down here, like that. Make that transition down here. Get my brush wet. Bring more of the burnt umber and mix it with some yellow ochre. And I come down over here and create that muddy color of the water. There. A little bit more yellow ochre. This time with a little bit of sepia. And do this wet area. Change brushes to my larger flat brush and bring those same colors into this area. Like that. And make that gradual transition again a little bit more visible from the dark brown before that paper dries to this brownish color, muddy color. Tilt the paper and bring that down like that. Bring that down all the way down to that mud color in the water. And bring that color over here too before this area is completely dry. In fact, I'm going to add a little bit more water to my brush and do away with this line. There we are. Like that. Okay. Now, before the paper dries, I'm gonna bring a little bit more water here and softly do the transition. Like that. And that almost finishes the painting. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring a little bit more of the aureole yellow with this brown and do a little bit more, some grasses and things over here, a little bit more greenery in this area. Like that. Bring a little bit of that aureole yellow and add some of that over here too, before the paper dries. Very light. There, like that. Now let the paper dry. And that's it. So before the paper dries, I'm going to, with a flat brush, almost a dry flat brush, pick up some, while the paper is still kind of damp here, pick up some movement or shapes on the bottom of the sandy, dry area, like that. Maybe some submerged rocks or something like that there. Like that. A bit of that over here too. And that's about it. I'm not going to touch it anymore. And the painting is done. So I'm going to remove this while this is still damp. Remove this tape and bring a dark color background so you will be able to appreciate it. There we are. And this last portion, the top is always tough to move. But here we go. And here comes the dark board. And I'm going to pick this up carefully. And there it is. I'm going to minimize a little bit so you can see. And there it is. Nice, very tranquil creek. Some of these beautiful greens, some grasses, some weeds, some whatever, these sandy banks, and all the reflections done very softly. Thank you for watching this video and I hope you enjoy my painting. And please visit my website at aafinearts.com, where you will see information about my virtual classes and a selection of my paintings and prints. Thank you again. Until next time.